Cool intro, eh? Hey people, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Welcome to my first sort of films ranked. So normally I do heavy metal album rankings and all sorts of fun little tier listy things, and I thought, you know what, just to change it up, if you saw last week, the week before, I did a golden era Disney film ranking. That was fun. If you haven't seen that, go check it out, talking about the golden era of Disney. And then I was like, do you know what, I explained in there to be like, do you know what, let's broaden the channel a bit. You know, we talk about metal all the time, and metal is fun, but guess what? We have other interests too. And who doesn't love movies? So I thought, why not kick the door down with one of the most toxic film franchises of all time. When I say toxic, I'm talking about the fan base, obviously. Hello, welcome to the Star Wars film rankings. Quick disclaimer, I like Star Wars, don't get me wrong. It's fun to watch, and I don't love Star Wars. So I don't hate it either, obviously. So I'm what you would call a casual Star Wars fan. You know, I don't get into all the little side Disney Plus shows that they've made. You know, I've seen Obi-Wan and I've seen the Clone Wars animated show, but that's about it. I haven't seen Boba Fett, I haven't seen Andor, I haven't seen The Mandalorian, I haven't seen Ahsoka. So I've seen Han Solo, the side film, and as well as Rogue One, obviously. But today, we're just going to rank episodes 1 to 9 because they are the main ones. They are the story, you know, there's no spin-off stuff. So, yeah, I thought this would be fun because, like I said, I'm a casual Star Wars fan. I just enjoy the movies at face value. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let me know down below what your favorites are and why, and let me know which of those series that I mentioned before that I should probably invest some time in that are worth it. So yeah, without further ado, we're just going to get started, starting at the bottom all the way to go to the top. And let's start obviously with number 9. So probably like all of us in terms of Star Wars fans, whether or not you're diehard or just casual like me, coming in at the bottom is episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I was excited to watch this film. Obviously, it was the last one, you know, and it was kind of like, all right, cool. I didn't hate episode 7 and 8, so I was just like, let's see how this thing ends. You know, it's pretty much been a 40-year saga up until this point, so it was like, all right, cool. Whilst I got a kick out of certain parts, I do remember thinking a lot of, oh, yup. You know, does that make sense? Like, for a start, oh, by the way, spoilers alert, obviously. So, like, at the start, where they say, you know, somehow Palpatine has returned, it's just like, oh, yep, he's been dead this whole time, and then just happens to come back now. You know, some of the fight sequences were cool, but you do miss how they once were, you know. They're a bit more gritty and whatnot back then, and you know, with the kickflips and whatnot, and now it's just, you could say it's a bit more it's a bit more real. I don't want to say realistic, but like, you know, it's what made all the older ones so much cool, like episodes 1, 2, and 3 make them so cool, having them watching them kickflip everywhere. But like, yeah, I've seen this film once, and I remember saying, don't rush back to watch that again. So I can't exactly remember note for note, plot for plot, but I do remember, yeah, the start being tugging on the hearts. Well, not tugging on the heartstrings, but hitting in the nostalgia when it opens with the whole with the quote from Palpatine being like, you know, some consider it to be unnatural, the speech that he gives to Anakin in episode 3. So I was like, oh, yep, that's how they wrangle us back in. But yeah, like, it ended in a dumb way, and I don't really need to go on about it. So yeah, number 9, Rise of Skywalker. Coming in next, coming in number 8 is episode 8, The Last Jedi. I do remember, you know, not hating this one. I've seen this one a small handful of times, like 4 or 5, by choice. And, you know, like, it was all good to a point. I thought it was weird. Well, again, I haven't watched this film in quite a long time. So again, I can't remember plot for plot, but I do remember thinking like, okay, this is an interesting film because it's sort of like, it's a weird film because it's just a bit different. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't know how to talk about it because I haven't seen it in a long time, and you can tell that I'm struggling. But yeah, like obviously from coming off of episode 7 with Luke Skywalker being, not the coolest person anymore, that pretty much follows through into this one with that whole, the Force is dead type vibe. However, that part at the end, was pretty funny, you have to admit, where he's, channeling, channeling his thing. I'm gonna get roasted by the Star Wars fan base, but that's fine. Where he's sitting on the rocks miles away, and yet Kylo Ren thinks he's right there. He's just absolutely abusing him. That was funny. It's like snow on the red. The whole red and white vibe was kind of fun. This film is the last film to feature the Imperial March. I know that. That's a fun little tidbit, which is when Kylo Ren destroys the mask, the helmet rather. And yeah, that whole side quest that he goes on with the Asian chick. What's her name? What's her name? Rose. That's it. Yeah. When they go off to that whole gambling place, that was odd. It was sort of like trying to I don't know what it was trying to do, but yeah, it's an okay film. Definitely not the best, but it wasn't the worst. Obviously, number 8 is episode 8. This might cause some rife. Number 7 for me is episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I always struggle to watch this one when I decide to watch them, which is funny because it's technically, it's episode 2. So it's right at the start of the story, It's got nothing to do, but weirdly enough, it's got nothing to do with Hayden Christensen. It's got nothing to do with the script. It's got nothing to do with his acting. I think Hayden Christensen does a fine job of doing, young Anakin Skywalker, because you try to imagine being a young Jedi being trained as a Jedi at a very, very young age, and to be told that, they pretty much don't feel love or whatever. And then you have a boy who goes through puberty, especially one of his caliber with the whole, with the whole midi-chlorians that he's got in him. His puberty chart must be off the roof. And then he falls in love with the first girl to then only find out later that she's now grown into a woman. So it's just like, oh my god, how am I not supposed to feel about this? That's not why it's low. Why it's low for me is because it's just a bit like the Two Towers for Lord of the Rings. It's an in-between film with a pretty epic ending. There's so much talking going on in this film, and there are little bits in it that make it fun to watch, like at the start, for example, like right at the start where Anakin and Obi-Wan are hunting around town for the bounty hunter. That scene's cool, and they go to the pub, and that bounty hunt begins, and then she gets attacked by the sluggy things and then whatnot, all that stuff. But then in the middle of it, it's just a lot of talking, and for me, it's just a lot of listening, and it's very hard to get through. You get the scene in the middle of the film, obviously, where Anakin kills all the sand people, and then he retaliates. He shouts at her, "I killed them, all the men, the women, and children." We all love that meme. What makes these early ones interesting to watch for me, just as a casual fan, but obviously as a diehard music fan, is the nods to future and past, for that matter, scores that they use. When he freaks out after killing all the sand people in front of Padme, and then he sits down in his slump, and you can hear the Imperial March at the end of that piece of music. So as a foreshadow as to what to come. So that was cool. But yeah, and then obviously the end, when the Attack of the Clones ends, it's got the epic battle, with them in the pit, and with Count Dooku and whatnot, and Yoda starts fighting as well. So that's cool, but goddamn is it a lot to get through before you get there. So yeah, number 7, Attack of the Clones. Number 6 is 2015's The Force Awakens. I remember when this one came out. I was living in Australia at the time when this one came out, and I'll never forget the day that it came out, because I was walking home from work. It was in Sydney, funny enough, if you're familiar. I was walking along Darling Harbour out by the massive IMAX theatre that hangs out there, and it was late. It was like 11:30 after my job, and I remember walking past that IMAX, and I could see in the distance that there was a lot of people hanging around there, and they were all wearing hoods, and and I was just like, oh god, here we go. This is going to be fun, trouble. And then I got closer, and then I realized that they were just a bunch of Star Wars nerds wearing Jedi cloaks getting ready for the premiere of this film. So that was quite funny. The Force Awakens was interesting because it took well, it pretty much it started a whole nother fan base of generation, another generation of fan base. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought Finn is he's a cool character. You know, I enjoyed watching him. I would much rather watch him than Rey. You know, although I've got time for Daisy Ridley. You know, she's pretty fun, and you know, she made Force Awakens pretty enjoyable, but Finn did as well. It was funny to watch a Star Wars film where they use words like bro. You know, that was weird, but like it gave it a 21st century kind of vibe as well. You know, I saw this one in the movie theaters, even though I just said I was in Australia at the time. I actually saw this in America, so that was pretty fun. On a massive screen. I got a kick out of the film. What stood out for me in this one? I thought it was just a cool story, like, and it was fun, obviously, to see Han Solo come back as well, even as an old man. You know, but the banter between them was always fun, and you know, the Millennium Falcon comes back, and BB-8 gets introduced, and he's a quirky little thing. So you know, it's like obviously next gen R2D2, but you know, seeing him together was pretty fun. But yeah, the ending of this was cool when they battle it out in the snow and stuff like that. You know, it was a cool way to start the next gen. I didn't hate it. You know, it's just middle tier for me at the moment. So yeah, number 6, Force Awakens. Number 5 is episode 6, Return of the Jedi. This is obviously my least favorite one out of the original trilogy. It's because I found it, I suppose, a bit slower, I guess. Like, it ended it ended the story essentially, right, at that time. And when I first watched it, I do remember thinking, holy God, this is boring. You know, there wasn't so much action stuff going on. There's a lot of Ewok stuff, and you know, I wasn't really into that stuff. Obviously, I'm used to episodes 1, 2, 3, so to watch the older ones is very like, okay, it's slower paced, but like watching it again, like later, you think, oh, it's not an awful film. The ending is cool though, like the resolution of Darth Vader's last act being like a good act for him to like save Luke. You know, that was pretty fun to stop him from turning over or whatever it was. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I've seen this one a lot more than the others at the end. That there was the dialogue between Luke and Vader is very repetitive. It's a lot of Obi-Wan has taught you well, backwards and forwards. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And obviously the fight scenes aren't as dramatic as I'm used to, but it is what it is. It's 1983 at this point, so like, you know, it was fun, and it was a good time. You know, I was quite tripped out as well when I saw the end and they had like photoshopped what's his name into the end of the film to show Anakin at his, you know, he's dead, but he's gone to the other side as he was before he turned. So it was just like, oh, okay, that's a interesting addition to the film. But no, it was fun. Chewbacca was cool, and C-3PO and R2, you know, they're a great addition. You know, they're obviously the Star Wars edition of like Merry and Pippin or Fred and George from Harry Potter, and you know, you need those in these massive films. But yeah, it's fun. It was a cool way to end it, and yeah, it's again a bit like Force Awakens though. For me, it's middle ground. So yeah, number 5, Return of the Jedi, episode 6. Number 4 is episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. This one is cool. This one is pretty much like where these films, for me, are like goddamn amazing. You know, like this is the ones where I happily will watch a lot more than the others. However, though, it's a bit like Harry Potter. When you start watching one, you kind of have to watch the whole thing. You can't just sit there and watch Empire Strikes Back. I can't sit there and watch Empire Strikes Back and just not carry on. You know, so I would always have to watch them in order across time. But anyway, this one is the complete opposite to A New Hope, obviously, with A New Hope being focused on like Tatooine and desert and sand and whatnot. This one takes place on Hoth, which is a full-blown ice planet. So just a massive contradiction there, just to keep it exciting. This one is the mad, like, it's more exciting. The dialogue is better. The acting is cool. Like Princess Leia looks awesome in this. You know, the banter between her and Han Solo is, you know, awesome. This has the infamous "I love you, I know" scene. I'm pretty sure, and you know, so that's pretty awesome. And it's obviously got the big reveal that Vader is actually Luke's father. You know, I don't need to tell you that, but you know, I can only imagine what watching that must have been like in 1980, which is when this one came out. When was this released? This one was released, it doesn't tell me. Oh, May 21, 1980. So yeah, imagine that massive reveal back then. You would have died. You would have been like, what? So that's cool. Even knowing that it was coming, it's still cool to watch it in its consecutive, in its place. Do you know what I mean? So the Sky City as well, whatever that's called, I can't remember. Billy D. Williams turns up, you know, that's fun. And it's just, yeah, it was a cool time. The ice stuff and the fighting at the end. But yeah, this one has a lot of the Obi-Wan has taught you well stuff that I would mention before. He loses his hand and whatnot. It's all well and good. It's good fun. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. Number 4, number 5, number 4, Empire Strikes Back. Now, because I'm of this generation, because I'm of the 90s clan, number 3 is The Phantom Menace. I love this film. It's goddamn good. I don't care what you say about Jar Jar Binks. He's part of the Phantom Menace film, and he's half of what makes it. You know what I mean? Yeah, when he turned up in Attack of the Clones, we were all a bit like, oh, he's back. But thankfully, he only just turned up at the start, so that was all good. I can only imagine the hype when this film was released. Imagine you watch episodes 4, 5, 6, right? In 77, 80, and 83, and then you wait 15 years, more or less, to get episode 1. Oh boy, especially that teasing poster that I saw. That poster right there is just like, whoa, imagine it. So, obviously the big thing that makes this film awesome, well, 2 big things that make this film awesome for myself is obviously the pod racing scene. That's just absolutely glorious. And obviously the Duel of the Fates fight scene between Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon. That just in the end makes that whole fight in the end makes the whole rest of Phantom Menace film worth watching. Do you know what I mean? But like, there's talking in amongst all this, but it's interesting to listen to. Do you know what I mean? People say you can watch the whole saga without episode 1 and it will still make sense. And good on you. But for me, it's very important and it's very fun. And, you know, watching Red Scary Face Man do cartwheels and flipping around and whatnot, it's just awesome. You know, it's quite cool to see Anakin as a, you know, very, very little boy, and, you know, with his mum hanging out, and then he goes off to become Mr. Jedi Man. And, you know, it's unfortunate that Qui-Gon dies. You know, that was sad, but it was powerful and emotional. It was just so cool. And then we watch his body burn, and yeah, the Gungan fight at the end and all that jazz. That's pretty insane as well. You know, there's always a bigger fish. You know, these films are full of memes these days, but hey, who cares? It's pretty awesome. So yeah, number 3. Oh, also, if you get right to the end of the movie, like right to the end of the credits, there's a foreshadow of the Imperial March again in the credits. So that was fun. Again, a thing that a music person will notice. Yeah, it's pretty cool. This one has like edited versions of Yoda, you know, compared to the versions that I've got where Yoda looks like Yoda, you know, what we all know he looks like, but when it was released, he looked a bit more mutant-y. I didn't know that until later, so that's pretty funky. But yeah, it's a great film, and I don't care what you say, it belongs in the saga. So yeah, number 3, The Phantom Menace. Number 2 is the OG. Number 2 is episode 4, A New Hope. I just really, really love this one because probably, even though it's middle story, it's the first one, right? So like, everything is new to everybody, you know, like, and even watching it in numerical order, if you watch episodes 1, 2, 3 and then watch episode 4, you do still kind of get a sense of, oh, it's like we've started again almost, because obviously episode 3 ends with Luke being a very, very small baby, and then episode 4 starts with Luke being, you know, a young adult. So it's like, cool, time has passed and we sort of start again. So it does obviously still give that vibe of, look around, everything is new. The music for Star Wars is pretty beautiful. Like the theme itself, obviously we don't need to talk about it, but like the themes on this film in particular, I really, really get a kick out of. Like when we first meet Luke and he's running around in the desert, you know, there's his score, and then we meet Leia and her score's pretty cute as well. You know, Alec Guinness does an absolute amazing job as Obi-Wan. You know, I thought he was cool. You know, I was like, I'm going to see him, from me being me from the younger generation, I don't know who he is. I don't know where he came from. You know, you'd have to ask my father, but like, you know, you realize how much of an important actor he was back then. So for him to do this an upcoming unknown space movie is kind of like, oh yeah, good for you. Obviously with a young with a young Harrison Ford as well being Han Solo, just to create the create that character. You know, he's awesome. All three of these actors were pretty unknown when this happened, so they really shone through. Again, but like in episode 1 with the added CGI stuff, watching this in 1977 versus how I've been watching it in the early thousands is obviously almost two completely different films in terms of like the visual effects that they've done, and certain scenes were added in and things like that. But in terms of general story, it's all obviously the same thing. We have the very, you could say not anticlimactic, but you have the ending fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. That's pretty, yeah, as simple as it is, it's just, you know, it's still very, back then, obviously you have to appreciate the time it was, that would have been pretty hardcore. Yeah, I just love the story of the whole thing, and like, you know, with the whole, where they try and shoot through that tiny hole, you know, it's cool. It's a great film, and you know, the film opens with us meeting Vader like pretty much straight away, so it's almost like, oh yeah, cool, who is this guy, with the heavy breathing and whatnot. And yeah, it's just a great film. So yeah, I haven't watched it in a little while, and I miss it, to be honest. So yeah, number 2 is A New Hope. Which means for me, team, I'm pretty sure once you figured out what generation I was that it was coming, number 1 for me is episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Good Lord. This film is something else on its own. This film is just a whole mixed bag of emotions. You've got action in it, you have sadness, you have triumph, you have anger. There's so much going on in this film. You could say that this one has a lot of talking as well, and yes, it does, but it is warranted because of what is coming out of it. Obviously, this is the film of the transition, right? This is the film of Anakin really fighting with his power to be like, I don't agree with what the Jedi want to do. The dark side is pretty convincing and pretty exciting. So obviously he gets groomed by Palpatine, and it's just, I love, how do I say this, watching his transition from good to bad. I just find so fascinating. It's the little bit that made Attack of the Clones worth watching, is watching him slowly transition into this evil person, because what makes it interesting is he believes that he's doing it for the right reasons. You know, it's what he stands true with. You know, the Jedi cause all these problems or whatever, and all you need is a superior leader to be like, yeah, without that, you know, life would be so much better. And because he was blindsided as well by Padme, you know, and just because he wanted to save her and whatnot, he did it all for her, did it all for love. If that hadn't come about, then he probably wouldn't have done it. But still, the Sith has power, the Jedi knows not. Anyway, aside from the infamous scene of him turning over, it's us, you know, again, but like Attack of the Clones, it starts pretty damn amazingly, you know. It starts with the fight against Count Dooku, you know, and Count Dooku pretty much dies pretty quickly. And even then, straight away, he's like, it's not the Jedi way, I shouldn't have done that. And he's like, don't worry about it, he killed your parents. Hey, don't worry about it, he killed your parents, so you should have done it. Okay. And obviously with General Grievous in this film as well, it's meme upon meme at this point now. But aside from all that, yeah, the script is a bit shaky, but it's so good. This one came out in 2005, and I remember watching it for my birthday in the movie theaters. I was 12 when this one came out, and it's a long film for a 12-year-old to watch, but by this point, I had seen 3 Harry Potter films, so I was ready for another 2.5-hour film. But again, it's about watching the build-up that leads into episode 4. That's what makes watching episode 3 exciting. When it ends and you have the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin, you know, and then he loses, obviously, and he becomes burnt, you then realize that, like, oh, so that's how Darth Vader became, well, not really, but that's why Darth Vader wears the suit, is because he's covered in burns. You know, watching Palpatine name him Darth Vader is like, whoa, you know, now rise and go kill all the younglings. That scene is emotional. Episode 66 is pretty Execute Order 66 is pretty hardcore. Watching that in the Clone Wars was pretty hard hitting as well. You know, and it's just like, good God. And there's that scene just before it all goes wrong where he's like staring out into the sunset and he's crying. And I think that point is that's the turning point where he's like, nah, I'm gonna do it. I have to do it in order. You know, he's like he knows he's betraying his friends and whatnot, but it's what's true to his heart, so it's what he has to do. And that's just what makes episode 3 so goddamn powerful. And then to watch Darth Vader get made and his helmet get closed, and then you hear the for the first time, you know, but it's just like, oh God, you know, there are certain scenes where, like, I think it's the scene where Palpatine gets arrested and he's looking at Death Star plans. You know, it's just funny. It's just funny to watch it all prequel. You know, it's so cool. But I could go on forever. Number 1 is episode 3. The greatest Star Wars film out of episodes 1 to 9 is easily episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Sweet as team, thank you so much for hanging out with me while I sit here and get increasingly more passionate about Star Wars films. So this was my first ranking of a film saga. I'll probably do a lot more. I want to do Harry Potter, but I feel like I'll betray a few people if I do it without them, so that might take a while. But yeah, keep an eye out for the next one. There'll obviously be more metal content coming out as well, but I just thought we'd do this as a little side bit just to engage more people, really engage more people and get me talking about some other stuff. Like I said at the start, let me know down below what your ranking is, how much you love them. Let me know what shows I should be watching if they're worth the time, and keep an eye out for the next films ranking. It'll probably be my top 10 horror films, because who doesn't love a bit of horror? So yeah, keep an eye out for that one. But until that happens, everybody, stay inside, stay safe, watch Star Wars, and I will see you all in the next video. See you later.